My book recommendation for the year only came last week. I finished it 2 days ago, but I finished it in an afternoon. It's Carol Lewis's Drift, which is actually Wales Book of the Year. It's Carol's first book in the English language, but she's previously won the Welsh Language Book of the Year twice. So she's incredible, and it just, you know when time flies by when you're reading a book like you're with an old friend. It was like that was beautiful.
So I'm part of a book club called the Rebel Book Club. They read non-fiction books, and one of the books we read this year was called AI, The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman, and he's one of the co-founders of DeepMind. So AI is something that's impacting all of us. Part of it's like exciting, like it could, revolutionize the way we do things, make our life easier, but also the spectre of how it could take our jobs. But maybe, who knows, the future's up for grabs.
So the book that I think I've enjoyed the most this year is a couple of years old, but the book I've just finished reading is John McClane, Hero of Red Clydeside by Henry Bell, about the socialist revolutionary John McClane, who died in 1923, so 100 years ago, almost this week. And so that's kind of been on my mind. He was, if you don't know anything about him, he was an incredible figure. He was a teacher, as well as being a sort of lover of socialism and the workers and trying to give people their rights. He was imprisoned in 1918 for sedition, and he was force-fed, and that sort of led to his death some years later. So it's a very sad story, but it's really important. And those sort of historical, it's really brought to life. Those historical figures are so important in our history, and often there's big sections of our history that are kind of forgotten, especially workers' history, people's history. So I loved reading that. I have to say my other favourite book was Because I Don't Know What You Mean and What You Don't by Josie Long, because I as her life partner, I know that any profit comes back into our household, so it's important to sort of get that in as well. But those are the two books I've recently read that I really loved. And because I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, I mostly just read children's literature, although it is kind of sort of magic. There's something very hopeful. I read a book today called A Pip and an Egg. I'm afraid I don't know the writer of A Pip and an Egg, but it is literally about a seed and an egg meeting and becoming best friends until eventually the egg, she becomes a bird, and the pip, he becomes a tree, and the one nests in the other. I won't give it away, but it's rather special. So yeah, I read that in Manchester Library earlier today to my daughter, not just alone.
A book that I have been reading recently is Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kaur Jaswal. It's a really kind of heartwarming and funny story about these Punjabi women that go to a writing class in North London, and yeah, really enjoyable. My partner's reading another book by that author at the moment, so it's very, very popular in our household.
Been reading all sorts of books. I quite like some sciencey things, but I did quite enjoy reading the Keeper of Stories in the summer. It was a very relaxing book, and sometimes that's just what you want, a book that's just nice and just relaxing to read. But I read all sorts of different genres.
I've read quite a lot of books this year, but mostly children's books, and my favourite one that I've read this year has got to be Here We Are by Oliver Jeffers. It's not his newest, he's got another one called Begin Again, I think. But Here We Are is about a family who get in the car and they drive off into space, and as they drive further and further away, they look back at Earth, and because of how light and time travels, as you look back at Earth travelling forwards, you're kind of looking back in time, so it's history and it's science and it's humanity all in one, and it's brilliant.